All right. It's just you and me so far, but we should be on.
Oh, we should turn on the chat too. So.
All right, people are starting to file in. I just want to apologize for the late start today. Our guest is actually dealing with weather issues. So apologize for starting a little bit late here. BigBeat, I think that we should just go ahead and get started unless you have any objections to that. And then hopefully we'll be all set here in a sec. So thanks everyone for joining today. Have a real special treat coming up here. And today we are going to be discussing infrastructure and infrastructure planning. And if you recall correctly, this is actually one of Steve's calls, and I know nobody is surprised, but Steve's call, of course, was right on the money. So with this, Steve, now that we're seeing all of these presidential candidates release their plans, how does this affect your call or your view about everything that's going on?
Good question, Ryan. You know, I did call infrastructure to be the big thing. As we can see, we're going to pull up a few company stocks prices here in a little bit. But quite frankly, Ryan, with infrastructure, it is such a wide sector that we have to figure out what's the subsector that we're most interested in regards to where is the money being placed from the governments. And we're going to talk to my friend Shane Jemison today about a few of those subsectors. One of them being water, and we'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about one of them that's interesting to me is roads. We need lots of roads to get things moved around. Number two, obviously, is the rails. Warren Buffett seems to love the rails, and he is very interested in buying them, and he has been. Ryan, if you want to show them, one of them, interestingly enough, is Burlington Northern, is BNSF. You'll see that if you pull up, Ryan, at least 3-year chart or 5-year chart, you'll see exactly what I mean when it comes to Burlington Northern. You can also look at CSX is one for me too as well. That I'm also always watching because they have issues there with strikes. But for the most part, that's a pretty much a straight up chart over the last 5 to 6 years. So we got to move product around the country. Now, what is interesting to me in the infrastructure is how we've changed the movement of manufactured products. As we know, the last few days, manufacturing numbers have come down. Jobs within the manufacturing sector have been eroding now. And so manufacturing is usually the leading indicator for the markets, right? As I always say, Dow theory. I always look at transportation stocks, right? You got to look at, if they're not going up and they're not being moved, then people aren't buying things, right? And especially now when we can't really track retail sales within the store, we have to track them via online, right? And so for me, we got to have a good infrastructure, and especially with roads. Now, the one that I've been talking about, Ryan, I want to show everybody is MLM. That is Martin Marietta. And I also can say U.S. Concrete, right? USCR. If you'll notice back when I started talking about the spring and the summer about Martin Marietta MLM, it has literally been a straight shot. You would have had a really good return there on the portfolio.
Yeah, and Steve, just looking at the chart here, it looks like midsummer when you made that call, we're trading around a 210 handle, between a 205 and a 210 handle, and we're up printing at near 275 now. So that's a monster. That's an absolute monster. And you're right, that is pretty much straight up one pullback that you could have reloaded on, but that's it. So just a great call. So that was Martin Marietta. You said U.S. Concrete. Did you want to go over as well?
Yeah, USCR, another one there. So this now we looked at Martin Marietta from a different perspective. Now you're going to see that we need concrete now as well. So if you look back at, yep, right, so it's down, right? So what do you look for when do you want to buy stocks when they're low? When do you want to sell them when they're high? And so we're going to look to see if these plans that you just talked about with the president, some of these candidates are talking about $1 trillion of bills. So the president put out a $2 trillion plan together. I really liked it, by the way. I saw Mayor Pete put out a $1.6 trillion deal. Joe Biden put out a $1.8 trillion deal. So they're all right in that same area, the amount of money. Not sure where they're going to get that money from. Maybe raising the taxes on gasoline, as we know. So if that happens, then right, so it's going to cost more. And I think if it costs more for gasoline, what do people buy? They're going to be buying electric cars instead. So you see how infrastructure has changed how we think about the world and what we're buying and selling, right? And so we're going to have another call pretty soon, another sector call, Ryan. And as you know, we've got another sector coming up that may take us off the planet, right?
That's right. We may go to the final frontier, as they like to say. So stay tuned for that. So, Steve, you brought up a really good point about the plans and them all being similar dollar amounts. With your Washington experience, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me that infrastructure is one of those things that no matter what side of the aisle a candidate or yourself find yourself on, everyone seems to be in favor of it. We all need roads. We all need water. We all need our bridges not to be crumbling. So does that play into it at all? Is there one aspect of these different plans that you think is more important? Like we were just talking about Martin Marietta, and now we're taking a look at U.S. Concrete. We're talking about buying low and selling high. Is there anything that you can extrapolate or differentiate from these plans?
You know, my dad always says, Ryan, when it's election time, be on the lookout. You'll see people out there fixing roads, right? As we say here in Florida, the state tree is an orange barrel, right? You know, as we get closer to the election time, we start to see those things happen, right? We start to see movement within the infrastructure, whether it's building a bridge, whether that's building a road or we're going to talk about water pretty soon. But that in and of itself tells me that, okay, they're getting excited about it again. There's some plans out there. But I think Shannon will tell you the same thing. We all know about it in Washington. Not a damn thing happens during an election year. Everything gets turned around. We don't actually see things actually getting done. Bills don't actually get passed. Right. Especially, and I'm going to give you a little tip to the secret of Washington, August. If you don't see any bills getting passed by late July, early August, you'll see nothing because they go home to do one thing, to campaign. So that means Congress gets shut down probably end of July, early August. It's tip for tat, sometimes a little different, but usually by early August, they're gone, right?
Right. And so I just wanted to point out here, as you were talking, I just kind of noticed this. Perhaps this is why you told me to bring this stock up. But if you take a look here, and if you look back all the way to 2016, it looks like right around the 42 area looks like some pretty good support and resistance. Of course, this was support, and when it plunged through it, now it's resistance, and it looks like we're right there now. So your buy low, sell high. I think you might be right on here, Steve. And I think this is really important. What other stocks should we take a look at to kind of reinforce this idea?
Well, whenever you look at concrete, the next thing you got to look at is obviously steel. You got to look at X, and with, again, infrastructure stocks, definitely. But you also have to look at it from a perspective of tariffs. You have to look at it as protection of dumping from other foreign countries. And X is U.S. steel. So whenever we look at U.S. steel, it's got to be strong steel. A lot of times, other countries, their steel may not be as strong. It is cheaper, so it beats in the market. And sometimes companies don't really care. They want to cut the cost a little bit. But U.S. steel makes literally the best summer steel process. They're one of the best steels in the world. And so I'm looking at X a lot of times. I'm not telling anybody what to do with it, obviously, but I will tell you that it looks pretty cheap.
It sure does look pretty cheap. And I noticed that, we went back here several years on the current chart that we have pulled up here. We're going back to 2016. So we're going back just over 4 years here. And I'm wondering, is stuff like this, infrastructure, steel, things of this nature, is it better to look at this stuff with a longer time horizon? When you're talking about the election coming up, is this something that you would consider more of a short-term or a long-term opportunity? How would you meld those two things together, the election and both just the actual, in this case, steel?
Very good question, Ryan. Obviously, in this situation, I look at this as a longer term play, more of an investor situation. But as traders, We are looking at it in a little short-term frame, right? So obviously, I look at this one in an options play, right? So I would look for a longer dated option on
Sure.
X a little farther out. And I think you can see probably from the chart about where it should start to come back and where it should, start to pay out a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. And this brings up a really good point, because here I am looking at this chart from April of 2018. We've pretty much just had a staircase down, and we look like we're at some pretty good support here. But as you just mentioned, now all of a sudden, all of these candidates are starting to talk about their plans. And obviously, steel is a widely used material when you're talking about building infrastructure. So is it safe to assume then that we're going to see some, obviously we don't know the future, we don't know what's going to happen, but is it safe to say that we're going to see some pretty substantial moves in these stocks one way or another?
Well, you know what's interesting, Ryan? We're going to have a webinar soon about that with Sandman, right? About risk. And so
Right.
when we're looking at this position on X, right, we can look all the way back to 2016, right? Early 2016, and you can see right where the bottom is, and right there's where your risk is, right? So you have to risk a few dollars, but there you go, right? So if you're managing your risk and you have a good thesis, you have a time frame, you got to play.
And, that's a really good point. So let's actually discuss the other side of that before we move on here. As you were saying, we're taking a look here at where the support is, where the bottom was at the beginning of 2016. But then if we go ahead, we can also see where some of these upside targets were. If you look here at this bottom that we made in the beginning of 2016, we're in the 6 handle, between 6 and 7 here. And you'll notice that at the in the first quarter of 2018, we actually topped here what looked like 47. So if you're only risking a few dollars to the downside to have, in this particular case, $37 of potential upside, that seems like a pretty good risk reward. Now, I don't want to digress too much from the infrastructure itself, but this seems like a pretty good risk reward, pretty good thing to keep an eye on.
That is the very recipe for making money, right? Is to lower your risk and show where your reward is. So if you can always lower risk in any kind of trade, especially of a thesis of this large of a nature, your chances are pretty good. If you wanted to go back and we can look at UPS, we can look at FedEx as well. Who uses these infrastructures every single day, right? If we pull back and we go exactly, right, and you'll see that we saw some topping moves here in UPS, right?
Yep.
Round due for you, right? You'll see that it was very toppy, and it showed you exactly where that top was, right? And it's showing you that now it takes some risk off, right? It had triple tops. We can also look at FedEx, FDX. It can also show the same situation. And then we can also say that FedEx was cursed by Amazon, right? As they're now putting their own planes in. Once again, infrastructure, it's important, right? So we've moved away from how Amazon moves their product around to them having their own jets, right? And so that's a very, very, very important point. Is now not only do you have a different type of way of sending it, but now you got to have a new type of infrastructure. And that infrastructure there is airports, right? And airports have two things, right? They've got to have lots of steel and they've got to have lots of concrete and asphalt. You got to be able to lay those lines out. A good example of down here in Lakeland, Florida, Midwest or mid-central Florida here, Amazon has moved their planes out of Tampa and they're moving them into Lakeland, Florida, right? Why are they doing that? It's more of a private airplane strips there, and they're going to expand in all directions because there's lots of land. So you always want to find places with lots of land because you got to put down more MLM, right? They're going to need more of that asphalt and more concrete. So watch Amazon, see what they're doing. They'll tell you where the infrastructure money is going.
And Steve, so speaking of infrastructure, just as just a kind of an aside here, how does our infrastructure compare to other countries' infrastructure, especially like, excuse me, other parts of the country? How is it differentiated across our country? And then how does it also compare to other countries?
Ryan, I have been all over the world. I've set foot in a lot of countries, and I can tell you it depends on where you are. If you tell me about the roads in India, I will tell you they don't really have that good roads, but they have lots of them, right? If I tell you, let's go to London, let's go to Heathrow Airport, I'll tell you that they've got a huge airport, right? I mean, it's a big one. Everybody flies in and out of it. They're always growing there. I can tell you that the roads in Ireland are extremely good. They're very clean, very long, straight, and they're all new. That's really good, right? Here in the United States, it pretty much depends on what state you're in. I can drive between Florida and the Midwest, and I can tell you every state and how well their gas tax is because of how well the roads are. I will tell you in Ohio, they're having problems, right? Lots of bridges that fall in the past. That's a big problem, right? And so here in the States, it's a little bit different. If you want to, you can probably leave and go and look and see what states are rank them, right, by infrastructure. And if you see that, you'll see where to put that money.
All right, awesome. So besides steel and concrete, what other types of stocks, perhaps even basket of stocks or specific stocks even, are going to play into the whole infrastructure conversation that's going to start up here?
Well, Ryan, when you need to move things around with your products, right, and you have this infrastructure situation, right, crumbling roads and things of that nature, what also gets messed up is tires. You drive your car, you pop a hole in your tire, right? You have bad roads, you have potholes, all of a sudden your tires. So rubber is always an area that I look at as well. I also look at what type of vehicles people are buying. And what's interesting, Ryan, when I was growing up, you were growing up, everybody had a car, right? The family had a four-door car. Today, what do we have, Ryan?
SUVs.
SUVs, that's right. Everywhere you go, I got an SUV, but I got a foreign one, so I totally understand. Everybody's got an SUV. It's literally the fastest segment of the market. But I'm going to tell you, Ryan, with this infrastructure changing as fast as it is, and I know that our CEO will be happy to hear this, but electric vehicles have really been taking over right now. If you think about Tesla, if you look at a stock, the chart of Tesla TSLA over the last year, oh my goodness. Our CEO made a huge call saying that he expects the stock to break 400. Where are we now, Ryan?
476. He was absolutely right. And not only that, once we broke this triple quadruple top in around the 380, 390 area, this thing was a rocket ship through 400. It blew right through that barrier there. So that's a really good point. I'm really glad that you brought up cars. I'm still stuck in the past. I still drive a car. I don't have the SUV yet, but I have noticed that as the infrastructure starts to deteriorate, that actually may increase the cost of owning a car because you're going to have to make repairs to that car. You actually may need to replace that car in some instances. So this definitely has a kind of a ripple effect throughout the consumer market. So that's a really good point here. Tesla, this is a really good example.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, and it's not one that's traded yet, but I'll tell you what, another vehicle that I like is Rivian. That truck is cool. I'm really, really excited about the Rivian coming out. I think that's going to be one of those vehicles that seems to take over the market. Now, Ryan, there's another company that's out there. It's called Workhorse Group. I think that one is a very popular company within the trading community. You'll see it right there, WKH. There you go. Yeah, WKH. Yeah, got it right. You'll see back in May all of that buying. And we talked about that in Benzinga Pro. Charlie, our squawk guy, was talking about Workhorse, and very interestingly enough, that stock has been on a tear from about 70 cents to about $3. That's a big pop. Could it pop back up to $10? Probably. I don't know yet, but I will tell you that we're looking at in that area too as well.
I believe Workhorse was also in some news headlines over these past couple months going back to May. I think there was a lot of rumors about it, a lot of talk about it. And as you said, Charlie did mention that. I actually remember that. And the pro community themselves have been on top of that too. So it's not just Charlie. So another great one. Any other stocks here you want me to check out?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to talk about infrastructure, you probably need to talk about commodities as well.
That's right.
What do you need to make these products? And one of them is oil. We have been talking about oil for a lot lately, especially with the geopolitical issues going on in Iran, Iraq, and the United States with its fleet. I will tell you that the price of oil has been fluctuating quite heavily. Now, oil is affected by a lot of pieces of the puzzle, but one of them is that we definitely need oil in order to make roads. So especially if it's asphalt and chip and tar, you need oil as well. Oil, as most people think of it as gasoline, it's not. It is cracked up, as we call it, the crack spreads. Difference between heating oil and whatever it is that you're breaking it up to gasoline, plastic. But oil in general, we're looking at the $60 a barrel is where we are very interested in, right? If war drums continue to beat, $60 a barrel will be yesterday's news. But you know, less than 2 years ago, Ryan, we were considering $30 oil was the end of oil, and here we are doubling already. So,
and that's right. And so two things. So one, right before we actually went through that, where oil was about $30, I remember hearing all the way back when oil was $100, and how oil is used in, as you were mentioning, it's used in rubber, it's used in plastics, it's used for gasoline. Is it ever going to go below 100 again? Well, sure enough, it went down to 30, and the old saying goes, the best cure for low oil prices is low oil prices, right? So that's exactly what happened. Now we're starting to make a move up here. So you also mentioned something really interesting at the beginning of that I just want to circle back on and touch. You had mentioned that obviously the price of oil is going to be affected by what's going on over in the world, and especially today in the Middle East and all of that. Do you think that what happens with oil can actually then drive or affect policy decision when it comes to infrastructure? Or conversely, could it also affect some of those infrastructure stocks that we actually already discussed?
You know, Ryan, when oil prices jump and gasoline at the pump prices jump, the first person to complain is the driver, right?
That's
And
right.
they vote in November. So when they see prices of oil going up, they see gasoline prices going up, it'll usually affect that vote when it comes down to November. Without getting too deep into it, I can tell you geopolitically, people vote with their back pockets. They always have, they always will. I've learned that a long time ago, living in Washington and being on several campaigns. I can tell you that when people vote with their pocketbook, especially when the price of gasoline starts to jump up, just ask Jimmy Carter, right? When the gasoline major issues there, right, back in the 70s. But when oil price started to come back down, another president came in, Ronald Reagan. So, I mean, yes, that will affect a lot of things. And obviously, when a new regime comes in or doesn't go in this situation, President Trump here, he probably looks like to me and going to be reelected. In that situation, that maybe the infrastructure bills start to get passed. So I always say follow the money, Ryan. If we start to see numbers changing in the presidential election here, you should start to see numbers changing within the infrastructure world as well.
Really good point. And as you mentioned, it's very difficult to beat an incumbent. It always has been. It's certainly going to be the case again in this particular cycle. So great there. So do you want to, is there anything else that you want to cover? Do you want to discuss water a little bit? Do you want to talk about Shane at all if he can get back on here?
You know, Shane's obviously in Oklahoma, and they're having issues out there with tornadoes. So our hearts go out to their families out there in Oklahoma. Make sure that everybody's okay out there. We can obviously go on, Ryan. Let's talk a little bit about our favorite subject, Ryan. How about let's talk about Benzinga Pro?
All right. Well, so what kind of things do you want to go over in Pro here? Pretty much, we've just been showcasing the chart tool here. But is there anything else that we can kind of help our viewers with in terms of finding infrastructure plays or finding information about different infrastructure plays? Is there anything else here you want me to load up?
Let's talk about the watch lists. I think it's very important that when we talk about sectors is that they know how to find those watch lists of sectors and know how to import them into the system and how to uniquely use them to profit from them, right?
All right, so great idea. So here, I went ahead and loaded in a watch list tool. I'm going to go ahead and throw details in here as well. I have my main watch list here, but we're going to go ahead and load in those sector watch list tools that you were talking about. And thankfully, for us and for all of our viewers out there, you've actually already done all of this work here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the help button in the upper right corner. Then I'm going to click on visit help site. And this is going to take you to our help site. And right here on the home page at the very bottom is BigBeat's watch list. This is an entire category of watch list that BigBeat has created. You've heard him here all the time run through these stocks of the different sectors and the different market happenings. He's actually made all of these watch lists so you don't have to. You can actually go and import them into Pro. So here we go. Which watch list did you want me to use here?
Let's talk about water, Ryan.
Okay, so down here, I've gone ahead and I found the water watch list. You can also, to speed this up, if you know what you're looking for, you can also use your find function, Control F on PC and Command F on Mac, and you can actually just type in whatever it is that you're looking for. In this case, we're looking for water. We're going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to show us a preview of the water watch list. If you click on that image, it will download that watch list for you. Oh, looks like I clicked on the wrong thing here. Sorry about that.
And while you're doing that, Ryan, let's talk about water a little bit. Water is literally the most important thing on this planet. Air and water, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and so that's why when I say infrastructure and water, and I hear from traders that go, ooh, that's boring. I don't like that. I want to talk about Tesla. I want to talk about fast-moving stocks. Well, Ryan, we're going to show people why these stocks are very important and why and how they can make money off of this.
All right, hold that thought. That's a good one, but hold that thought for 1 second here. What I did was I went ahead and opened up that downloaded watch list that we just clicked on, and I copied all of the tickers that are listed in here. So it's just a list of tickers. You want to select them all and hit copy. You can then close your whatever program you use your spreadsheets on, and then you can go back into Pro, create a new watch list here. Let's call this water. All right, it'll be a blank watch list, and then you just go ahead and put your cursor in the search bar at the top, hit Control V, and it will go ahead and add all those stocks there for you. Now, one of the other things that we've done recently is we actually made an improvement to this. Before, you actually had to load the tickers into the search bar and hit enter. Now, as soon as you paste them in there, it will automatically populate that watch list for you. It also does it a little bit quicker. We've got a little bit better performance with that. So here we go, Stephen. I've loaded up your water watch list and I've sorted it by percent change on the day.
So Ryan, let's pull up a chart. You see your details page. You can pull the charts up. Ryan, one of the things I want to show exactly what I meant when I was talking about water. Let's look at Aqua.
All right. Sorry, I'm just resizing my windows here so we can make the most of it. You said Aqua.
AWK. We can look at AWK or WTR.
All right, AWK. Excuse me sorry about that.
And Ryan, if you pull up a 5-year chart or go back even farther there, you will see exactly what I meant when I was buying up this stock very cheaply, and I just left it in my portfolio, and that's what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So real quick here, I actually went a little bit farther than the 5 years as you suggested. We're looking at about just over 7 years of data. Steve, this is straight up. I count just looking at this real quick, I count 4 minor pullbacks on this chart. Otherwise, this thing is just an absolute monster. I shudder to think of where you added this. I'm not even going to put you on the spot and ask you, but this is an excellent example. So tell us a little bit more about this.
$30 a share. So I can tell you, Ryan, that the reason that I did this was because I felt in the infrastructure world, and I was right, that when we look at it in the future, will governments be controlling the infrastructure, or will privatization of infrastructure start to happen? And we're already seeing massive states and communities already turn over their infrastructure over to a private company. Now, we can always discuss, is that geopolitically, is that a good thing? I'm not going to answer that question. I will tell you that I am seeing a movement, and we have seen it continuing, where cities and municipalities are changing over. Now, how can I tell in the markets what's going to happen? So how do I know? And I'll tell you, Brian, this is the most boring thing I must have got out of my mouth, but the most exciting, and exactly how to find out whether or not a community is moving that way is how much they are moving into their munis. Municipal bonds are very important. If a city or a state starts to raise money by offering bonds for a specific reason, in this situation we're talking about water infrastructure, They raise money for that, those bonds, the munis, they call them munis. Where are they going to put that money? And a lot of times they go to pay off the infrastructure bills. If a city does not do that, then they have to find a way to fix those infrastructures. I think Shane talked about it the other day, that in many cases in Oklahoma, they saw where they had been using clay, can you believe this? Clay pipes to move water around. That was done in the 1870s. We now have PVC piping, and we have concrete pipes, and we have moved away from clay pots and clay pipes for a long time ago. And so when we did that, we had to see the progression, right, of how the infrastructure went in. Now, if we don't do that, we have to do it another way, and that way to do that is to commercialize it and to go into these companies. And Ryan, you'll see there's a whole bunch of companies you just pulled up. You can pull up pretty much any chart and you'll see the same thing.
So let's try that then. Let's go ahead and hit Aqua. I think this is what you had initially told me. This is ticker WTR. We have the exact same, excuse me, we have the exact same time frame here, going just over 7 years. And while this one has slightly more pullbacks, the general trend is identical to the last stock that you had just mentioned. And this thing has gone straight up to, did you add this one too in the single digits?
Absolutely.
All right. And so if we just go through, now here's my follow-up question to this. Does the size of this company matter at all? Or do the size of these companies matter? And I guess another way of saying that is, do the larger companies tend to get used more often than maybe the smaller companies by market cap?
Yes, but you made a very good point, Ryan. And my next point was going to be, what's interesting in this whole sector is you're going to see a lot of M&A. So as some companies grow bigger and some don't, they'll just buy the other ones out.
All right. Now, and that can be actually very beneficial for investors, especially if there's a premium paid for that company and you're a holder of that company. That could be a large payday for you. So that's a really good point. I actually hadn't even thought about that.
Ryan, if you want, you can show them how to sort by the price, right?
Sort the watch list here?
Yes.
So just like any of the other columns, you can actually sort this simply by clicking on it. And what we did here is I went ahead and clicked on price, just as Steve suggested, and you can see all of these different stocks are sorted by price. And what's great here is that if there is a particular stock that fits into your investment thesis, either with the price that it has, this is a very easy way to find that. And you don't necessarily have to use options. You can actually just buy the stock itself if that's something that you're looking for here. And this is a very easy way to take a look at all of that end there. So is there any other stock here that you want me to take a look at chart wise?
Ryan, we always like to buy lower price stocks, right? So we can always look at stocks that are a little bit lower.
All right, well, let's make it real easy and take the one that has the lowest price on that list, which is CADIZ. Do you know anything about CADIZ? Is this something that's been on your radar?
It hasn't been on my radar, but that's exactly what Benzinga Pro is used for, Ryan, is to find those stocks that I didn't even know about. I don't even know anything about this company, so that's a good thing, right?
That's absolutely a good thing. And that actually brings me to the next point. If we wanted to learn things about this company, we actually already have the details tool pulled up here. So one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to check out peers. Oh, and take a look at this, Steve. The peers tab looks awfully similar to the water watch list that you had. So that's no surprise there. And real quickly, while we're here, let's just take one of these as an example here. I'm looking for a stock that is on this peers list that is not in the water watch list. So I think I found one here, SBS, ticker SBS right here. If this was not actually in the water watch list, but that's okay, because once you click on peers, all you have to do is click on that ticker, and there is a shortcut button that says add to watch list that will allow you to add that very quickly. So in this case, we're just going to click on that. I'm going to scroll down to water. All right, now that stock has been added to that water watch list. So this is a really easy way to find out other companies, but you can also review key data. You can also review the financials of this company. So if this is not one that you're familiar with and you have a longer investment horizon, you actually may want to know about the financials of this company. That might be very important to your trading plan. And then, of course, as always, you can check out any of the recent news on these particular companies as well. Actually, still am on the SBS. Let's go back back to CDZI here. You can see here that we clicked on the stock here, and right in the news feed, this just jumped right off the page here, Steve. So you tell me what you think about this. I just clicked on the news feed, and right away here, I'm seeing a whole bunch of Form 4s for all the different directors. Looks like they were buying the stock at 11.04. Stock is printing 10.18 right now. So, Steve, does that tell you anything? I know this is not a company that we normally follow, but seeing stuff like this?
Yeah, sometimes companies need to pay off their upper management, and they do that via giving them stock. So we always want to find out how management is paid. And so in this situation, it looks like they've been giving quite a bit of money, and it looks like they've been doing it quarterly as well.
Excellent. So the details tab here, a really handy tool for helping you do your research, learning about things that you don't normally see or read about on a regular basis here. So this is great. So moving on, Steve, what's next here?
You know, Brian, I'm looking at this stock, and one of the things we need to always do is check the financials of any company. And I'll tell you, in that situation, if we go back to the key data, show them all the key data section here. Yeah, I'm always looking at, when I look at infrastructure stocks, I'm looking at long-term debt. Between different contracts, so when this government gives a contract to these companies and the next contract comes, there might be a lull in there. And sometimes you got to make sure they have enough cash on hand, and they got to make sure their debt isn't crushing them, because they still got to pay the interest rate, right, on that, on that debt. And so in this situation, we do a quick check here. You'll see that their cash flow is looks like their cash investing is down. Looks like their capital expenditure is up. Looks like they are down 12% on their earnings. They do have cash, so I don't know. This could be one of those companies that could get taken out.
That's especially if, like you were saying, as the infrastructure spending starts to heat up after all these plans, this may be something to revisit. So glad we put this on a watch list so we can easily keep tabs of that. That's perfect. So moving on here, what are we going to do next here, Steve?
I think, Ryan, that we need to show them how to create that sector workspace. So Ryan, just show them how to create a new workspace.
All right. New workspace can be created using the plus button at the top here along your workspace selector. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. It loads you up a blank workspace with no tools that we're about to populate. So what tools do we need here, Steve?
Ryan, I think very simple. I think we need to have a news feed. It's very important to get the news coming into the system, right, so we know what's going on.
I think you're right.
Ryan, we're going to create a water sector watch list. We're going to have all those kind of fun things. Let's go ahead and build out a water sector workspace.
All right, so let's go ahead now and add that watch list that you were just talking about. We will add the water watch list. This is all the way at the bottom.
Yep.
All right, and now I'm also going to add a details tool to this so we can review things. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to filter my news feed on the water watch list that we just pulled up here. So I'm going to click on the watch list button at the top of the news feed and then select water. You'll notice all of the stocks within that watch list are listed here. Go ahead and click done. Now we're only seeing news for this particular watch list. So I have the water news feed, if you will, a water watch list here. You can, as Steve had mentioned, you can do this with any sector that you want, and you don't even have to build those watch lists because Steve's got them done for you. So you can actually just grab one of those watch lists, import that watch list into Pro, then filter your news feed by that watch list, and voila, with several clicks of the mouse, you have a tailored news feed to sector. And as I mentioned, you can do that to any sector that you are interested in watching.
It's interesting, Ryan. Sometimes we're not at our computer all the time. We can also add the signals into the workspace.
There we go.
There with the watch list.
All right, so great call there, Steve. I went ahead and added signals to this now as well, and I can do the exact same thing. It's done a little bit differently in signals. You actually want to click on the filter button. That will bring up the filter menus. These are all of the different filters that you can apply to this tool, and lo and behold, one of them is watch list. So if I click on that, you'll notice that the watch list filter has been added to the tool. Now it's time for me to select the watch list that we're using. In this case, we're going to use water. And I'm going to go back and turn on some of these other signals because I want to get as much information as I can. And in this particular case, because to me, this seems like, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong here, but to me, infrastructure plays like this would seem like more of like a long-term thing. You don't really build a bridge in a day. It takes a while to do this. And when you're talking about redoing roads, or in this case, we're talking about water here. So if you're talking about redoing pipes and having a lot of these projects are not done overnight. So what I want to do is I want to turn on 52-week highs and 52-week lows for these stocks as well, just in case some of these stocks are making new highs or lows. So here we go. We were actually, just by doing this, we've actually already learned WTR, SBS, the stock that I added. These, you had actually mentioned WTR to start with here, Steve. This is making multiple recent new 52-week highs, and we essentially confirmed what we saw on the chart several minutes ago, where the stock was just blasting straight up. So this is a really good way to monitor a particular sector. Obviously, you've got some options here that you can customize depending on what it is that you're looking for and what you actually care about. But this is a really great, Steve, really great tool here.
And the other thing that I think we should talk about, Ryan, is maybe creating a new workspace and showing them Screener how to screen out those stocks within that sector.
All right. So actually, one more thing. I'm actually just going to click on the pencil at the top of this workspace, and I'm going to name this water sector, because now I have an entire workspace devoted to this particular sector, and now it'd be very easy for me to come back to this. So to go along with what Steve was saying here, we're going to go ahead and create a new workspace. And I'm sorry, Steve, what tool was it that you wanted me to add?
Screener. Let's pull Screener. Yep.
All right, so here we go. My favorite tool to combo with the screener is, in fact, going to be details. So I'm going to do that here real quick simply by clicking on the first ticker that I see. You can also click on details from the left-hand menu. So, Steve, now that we have this, are we going to search by industry? Are we going to search by sector? How are we going to use screener in this case?
Either one. I think in this situation, let's pull up the industry, because the industry will allow us to see all of them within the infrastructure here. But when you're asking me about this kind of situation, let's do something that I'm interested in right now, and that's residential construction.
All right. So is in industry, let's type that in here. All right, so I could have, you would have noticed that the industry list is quite robust. There are a lot of different industries in there that you can select from. The easy thing about it is that you can also start typing them in the search bar. So Steve had mentioned residential construction. I simply started typing that in the search bar, and lo and behold, here it is. So we're going to go ahead and add this. Steve, did you want me to add any others, or was it just this?
No, just this one. The thing here is, whenever you have infrastructure being created, especially in the road situation, when people are buying new homes and are having them built, they want to be near what, Ryan?
Water.
They want to be near water. They want to be near the road. They want to be near the mall. They want to be near the everything, the restaurants, all of that stuff, right?
I would sum that up as civilization, but that's just me.
Civilization. Well, Ryan, you live in Chicago, so I'm not sure that is civilization.
Well done.
But you know, here I want to see how the home builders are doing too, and are they building as well? Because guess what, Ryan? They use the exact same products. They need concrete to pour the foundation in the building, right? They need all these things we just talked about, right? So Ryan, let's look at some of the bigger ones. So let's show them how to narrow it down. Let's say I don't want to look at home builders that are smaller, right? So how would I do that, Ryan?
All right. Well, so the way I would do that if I was tasked with that is I would actually sort that by market cap, right? So if I'm going to look for smaller companies here, I actually want to apply an additional filter here in the market cap field. So Steve, what types of values are you looking at here?
I think, Ryan, you got to be in the billions, right? So you need to have anybody that's over $1 billion.
Okay, so in that case, that actually leads me to the next thing here. We actually already have some presets in the actual menu here for you, but you'll notice that 1 billion, the preset that's, or the value that Steve asked me to use, is not in there. So normally I would just be able to select, like, mid here is greater than 2 billion, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to use the custom feature, because although the preset doesn't appear in the menu, that doesn't mean that it can't be done. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. You said you wanted 1 billion as your lower boundary. Did you want an upper boundary, or you just want greater than $1 billion?
Anybody over $1 billion.
So I'm going to leave that upper boundary blank, and then the result is greater than or equal to 1 billion. Market cap is already sorted here, so we can very quickly see these are the big companies that Steve was looking for.
Now, Ryan, in this situation, we all know what a PE ratio is. We know price to earnings. We want to see a company growing. But for me, I always want to see what?
Profit margin.
That's right. I want to see profit margin, and I want to see PEG, which is profit, earnings, and growth. So I want to see those two things. So Brian is going to show you how to add those two columns inside of Screener.
So what I did here was I simply clicked on the columns button. Let's get rid of it here. Columns button is going to be over here on your right-hand side. When you click on this, this works just like the fields. It has all of them listed, but you can also use the search in order to quickly find that. So I knew that Steve wanted profit margin. He reminded me very quickly that he also wants PEG. All you have to do to find those is just start typing them, and it will sort your results list to make it easier to find so you don't actually have to scroll through everything. Once we have those columns added, here's the other thing that we can do. We can actually rearrange them any way that we want. So you can see here that our results list is already giving, or excuse me, all of the results here are in the consumer cyclical sector. So I may not need to know that anymore. Steve, do you normally use sector in this, or can I turn it off?
Oh, I'll take it out, Ryan. I already know what I'm doing.
In order to save some space here and be able to put the columns that we do want to pay attention to, I'm going to go ahead and remove sector. This was on there from one of the examples before. We're just going to remove that here. Now the other columns are going to be visible, and you can actually reorder these columns into any way that you want. So I can just easily drag the column and rearrange them any way that I want. So we're still sorted on market cap here. Did you want me to sort by PEG ratio?
So, you know, Ryan, whenever I'm looking at a company to invest in, the first thing I want to know is, are they making money? What is that profit, right? So let's sort it by profit margin.
All right, so let's do that here. We've got, we have it in a descending order, which means we have the highest profit margin on the top here. It looks like NVR Incorporated profit margin of 11.54%.
So Ryan, I bet you if you clicked on NVR, I bet you're going to see a pretty good chart there.
All right, let's look at a slightly larger time frame. Well, look at that, Steve. How about that? So this is again going back 5 years. There was obviously one considerable pullback in 2018. Looks like it was January. Oh, actually, it was the year of 2018. It went just into 2019. But other than that, this is definitely a pretty chart. This is exactly what you were saying. So what we did here is we actually used Screener to find some specific stocks based on our criteria. Because we were able to load in profit margin in there, we were able to infer that, well, if the company has a high profit margin, the company should be doing well. The stock chart should look well. And lo and behold, here we are. So this is exactly, this is a great example.
And from right here, Ron, I can click on key data, and I bet you that their long-term debt is probably coming down a little bit. It's very simple, and you can also probably see cash flow coming in. You can see revenue there, Ryan, of $7.405 billion. So they're making money. Their PE ratio is 17.41. That's below the S&P's average, right? And their PEG ratio 1.492, getting close to that one number. So they have an earnings yield of 5.74%. So they're paying you out, making you money, and looks like, you know, their profit margin is almost 11.5%, and they're paying you out 5.74%. They're making about 6% off of you.
So pretty good, and pretty easy to do this too. This wasn't very difficult at all. Just again, a couple of clicks, we're able to filter through a whole bunch of stocks and then find the information that we're looking for in order to make trades here or in order to make a new decision. So another great example, Steve. What else? What's next here?
Ryan, I think we should show one more thing. Let's talk about movers. I think that's very important to look at, and because we're always looking to see the next stock is popping. And of course, you can also do all the fun things that we just added to all of these widgets as having the ability to filter us. We're always wanting to do that, right? In the mover situation, Ryan, if you want to show them how to find stocks that are moving.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the last example here, I showed you how to add another workspace. In this example, what I did was I actually closed the tools within the workspace, and now I'm being presented with the Build Your Workspace menu, and I'm simply going to click on Movers. The other thing that I use in conjunction with Movers, I'm sure Steve does as well, is the Details tool. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that.
Always.
Now, Now, what we have here, the thing to remember about movers is that this is designed for you to be able to find things that are moving very, very quickly. And what we are able to do here is we're able to find things that are either moving up, down, or both. And in this case, for the sake of the example, I'm going to leave it on gainers and losers so that we can see both. The other thing that I really want to point out to you here is the session. This allows you to scan the different sessions independently. So if you wake up in the morning and you sit down at your computer, the first thing that you might want to do is scan the pre-market. So I'm going to click on pre-market. The next filter that we've got to pay attention to here is period. And what I'm going to do in this example is I'm going to click on session so I can scan the entire pre-market. Now I have a list of stocks that are moving before the market even opens. So now, because I have the details tool open, I can go ahead and click on some of these other stocks and take a look. Maybe there's some news that's causing it to move. In this particular case, obviously we're midday here, so any of the news in the pre-market you'd have to scroll down here to see. And you'll notice that one of the things that we had here is our why is it moving. So this is one of the reasons that details is such a great pair with movers, is because it's very, very easy to figure out why a stock is moving. In this particular case, I clicked on CPAH. It says, why is it moving? Counterpath shares are trading higher, not seeing any company-specific news to justify the price action. So one of the things that you can say there is that, wow, this stock is actually up. In this particular case, this is up what looks like 250% on the day here, and we're not seeing any news. So this could either be potentially a mean reversion trade, or you can say there might be something coming down the pipeline. There might be something around the corner here. We just don't.
News, Brian, a couple of days ago, just so you know.
Say again?
They did have news a couple of days ago. I think that's just in the market now. So.
There you go. So, and you can, and I actually, that's shame on me. I didn't scroll down the news column far enough to find that, but you could have very easily found that by doing that. And this can be used on any of the stocks in this list. So you can actually click on any of these. I just clicked on SRNE, the one right beneath it. And sure enough, we've got the same thing here. Sorrento Therapeutic shares are trading higher after the company announced it has received a non-binding acquisition proposal from a private equity fund for $7 a share. So this sounds like there may be a chance that this company is getting bought out. I know we talked about that when we talked about the water space consolidating. And in this particular case, here's an example. This is not a water stock, but this is an example of a stock that was up in the pre-market, and we're telling you exactly why it's moved that way.
And Ryan, within the movers, you can also sort it by sector too as well.
Right. So that was actually the very next sector. Steve, you're reading my mind here. You can actually go into this sector and you can actually select any of the different sectors that are available here. In our previous example, when we were talking about infrastructure and we were talking about water, those sectors were the, oh no, I'm sorry, I messed it up. The consumers.
You can probably put basic materials, right?
Yeah, basic materials for the infrastructure. I clicked on consumer cyclical here, but here we go. Now we're looking at mining right off the top here. I see a gold and a mining stock, and then MT as well. So this is just another level of filter. Again, it's very, very easy to use. If you're not doing this in the morning, if you're actually just doing this throughout the course of the day, you can actually click on regular, and now you can actually scan all the different movers for the particular session. And you can do the same thing in after hours. Obviously, we're not in the after hours session right now, so I'm not going to have results. But you can scan any of the different sessions, and then you can also use any type of sector filter on top of that. The last two filters I really briefly want to touch here are market cap and price. These are very common. We actually just did this in the screener tool when we were sorting by market cap. You can actually put these filters on so that you can find stocks that, if you wanted something that was more liquid, maybe you want a higher market cap. If you want a stock that's a lower price, you can do that as well. We do have sliders that are available for you, or you could enter in custom values. So you can actually put whatever number it is that you want in here. All right, Steve, so I think that covers movers unless I missed something here.
I think we've had a pretty good webinar today.
Yeah, we sure did. I'm again, I'd like to reiterate your thoughts to the people of Oklahoma going through some of that crazy weather. We, of course, wish everybody the best. I'm sorry that we were unable to bring the guest on, to bring Shane on. But yeah, this tool is very, very powerful. It's very, very helpful. It can help you find things in any market, even ones that you know about and ones that you maybe don't know about that you need to do a little bit more research. So anything else, Big Beat, before we wrap this puppy up?
No, I tell you, if some of us are on a trial out there right now, we'd like to extend a warm welcome and look forward to seeing you being members of the Benzinga family.
All right. I absolutely second that. We are available all of the time. And the other thing is, if you need help with any of these tools, if you need something explained to you, if you would like us to recap that, we are available all of the time. You can always reach me any time of the day, any time of the market day, by clicking on the intercom button in the bottom right-hand corner. You can, of course, send us emails or give us a call. We would be more than happy to help explain and show you how these tools can be used to help you in your trading journey. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Steve, I want to thank you very much. Your expertise is second to none on this stuff. Really, really appreciate it. Amazing job with your call. Really looking forward to the next call. The next call is also up my alley a little bit more. We're going to be, can I tease it a little bit, Steve? Is it okay? Can I tease it a little?
Go ahead and tell them. Yeah, tell them what my next sector's call is.
All right. So we're going to be doing a webinar on space. And I know that seems kind of daunting just like that, but we're going to talk about, the commercial aspect of it. We're going to talk about the military aspect of it. I believe we're going to talk about Space Force, right?
Yep.
So we're going to talk about all that stuff. So if you are at all interested in things like, Virgin Galactic, space in general, NASA, any of that stuff, if you're interested in all that stuff, do not miss that webinar. We are going to be doing that real soon here. So thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. For Steve and for everyone else, I'm Ryan. Happy trading.